Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 6th BCYF Ideas Roundtable. The Benita and Catalina Yap Foundation is very pleased and honored that our friends from the Manila Times, headed by the Ang family, Dr. Dante Ang, and of course the chairman, Mr. Klink Ang, for having agreed to work with us for this event that happens only once every 3 to 5 years. It only happens when we think there's an important conversation that has to be had. And what has happened is that during this pandemic, which hopefully will be completely over soon, if not under control, the role of education, especially on online jobs, especially on hybrid situations, has made clear that there is a conversation that is required regarding media and technology.
Okay.
Thank you as well to DCRJ, Radio Bandido, for agreeing to work with us. The RMN, Radio Mindanao Networks, thank you to Mr. Eric Canoy. Thank you to the Jacintos. And of course, thank you to SMNI for agreeing to also be with us. Today, I'd like to introduce our discussants, our friends in this conversation. To my right is the President of the Center for Educational Measurement, Dr. Grace Aguiling Dalisay. To my left is Mr. Boboy Macapagal, who is, I consider, one of the eminent thinkers in finance in this country. Then to his left is the longtime leader of business and industry and of exporters, that is Mr. June Ortiz Luis. Other experts in our group are Ivana De La Torre here, representing one of two representatives, young representatives in our group, who is not only an author, but is also a consultant. Then we have Deliza Ridoloso, who is in Office Solutions, part owner of companies involved in bringing business solutions to banks and to businesses in the Philippines. We have Brother Obet Cabrillas, who will keep us faithful by leading us in a short prayer after our welcome. And another faith metaphysicist and expert, Dr. Emil Hudtohan, a professor at De La Salle University. Brother Obet Cabrillas is a professor at St. Anthony College of Technology in the graduate school. Thank you very much. Klink?
Well, Mr. Yap, thank you for inviting the Manila Times to be part of this important discussion. We are delighted to participate in this. Part of my voice, I took an antigen test this morning. I made sure I was negative before I came here, but okay. I do just have a bad cold. But education is, I think, one of the important issues that I think should be discussed more at a national level. A lot of people would say that we are facing an education crisis. The Vice President, who is concurrently Secretary of Education, has said so as well. But I think what's missing is a roadmap forward. I know there's been a new Philippine Development Plan published that mentions national testing as one of the things that we should be looking at. But I think discussions such as this is important to provide inputs to policymakers so that maybe they can refine their interventions. Because as they say, we have a democratic sweet spot to exploit. Unfortunately, if we have no success in intervening in the education crisis, I think this will be a missed opportunity for the Philippines. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts and inputs this morning.
Thank you very much. So to start us off, we will request Obetir to say a prayer to the one who guides us. Today's gospel is interesting. It says that we are given the option of either following God or not following God. In brief, we can be a Tower of Babel constructor, or we can be those who will choose to lead a better life. Brother Obet?
You come before the presence of the Lord. If you're Catholic like me, you can make the sign of the cross in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear God, we invite your grace to be upon us. Guide us, empower us, lead us, remove any apprehension, remove any obstacle that will hinder your wisdom from flowing. It is precisely intentional on your part, Lord, that you have chosen people who are at the front line, at the forefront of the mission of spreading wisdom and education, without which the future of any nation would not push through. And your philosopher would say that educating the mind without educating the heart is nothing. And we claim your victory, we claim your guidance, we claim your abundance. We claim that we are representing the people that you love. We claim we are being directed by your Spirit. You are a God who uses instruments. And today you're using BCYF and all representatives here to be a conduit of your grace. Let there be a synergy of your strength, wisdom, and love. And may your will be done today. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you very much. So I will turn over to Klink so we can start us off our discussion.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm sure all of you have heard about the convening of the Second Congressional Commission on Education. Their meetings are just starting this month. But I would like maybe to hear your thoughts about what they should be talking about, because when you talk about education, there's really a lot to talk about, right? I mean, more than just the review of the curriculum. Some people, for instance, suggest talking about parenthood as you know, an important part of preparing students or learners to perform well even in the basic education level. And also the EdCom 2 work will take, I think, a couple of years to complete, but certainly I think there's a general agreement that there should be some interventions made now. So maybe just your thoughts on what the scope should be and maybe what your expectations are. Maybe we can start with Dr. Dalisay.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to bring up the findings of this center. It's called the International Center for Academic Integrity. They work mainly with HEIs, higher education institutions, but I think their contributions would be valuable across the educational system, and even talking about lifelong learning. What the ICAI says is that we have to maintain academic integrity, and there are basically 6 values. Okay? Honesty, and look at mine. Honesty, trust, fairness, respect, responsibility, and the 5th, the last one that they included was courage, because they said that, of course, these values are usually shared by people, but what is needed is the courage to uphold these values. And I think this should be given importance, it should be highlighted. Given the advancements in technology, for example, the latest buzz on ChatGPT, on AI, where there are maybe apprehensions from faculty members and others in the academic institution as to how now can you check plagiarism and make sure that students are doing their own work, and faculty even are doing their own work. But with all these advancements, which are very important and laudable, I think what really is the bottom line is that we have the value so that we are able to use new technologies the way that they should be. Use new technologies in the service of education and students. So for me, that's one very important consideration. The other thing I'd also like to mention is the growing recognition of the importance of social and emotional learning. That this is something that is not an add-on, this is integrated into the different subjects that students have. So that from kinder even, we are already looking at ways so that pupils, students are able to recognize their own emotions, that manage interactions with other people, because this contributes to good citizenship. It helps us deal with people, and it also helps us deal with our mental health, which is one of the items that has been raised as part of the learning crisis and learning poverty. And my third and last point, when we talk about education, we don't really hear too much about assessment and testing. But this is a cornerstone of education because that helps identify the areas of growth and areas of improvement of students. To help teachers, guidance counselors identify what they should focus on, and even in terms of career readiness. I was meeting with DTI for some exchange programs. They're saying that really the skilling and reskilling of people, of workers, are important. So if we have that focus on being able to assess the aptitude of students, then we can help guide them through the right career paths. And assessment will be useful in this area also. So thank you very much.
Please join us, Sister.
Yeah.
Good morning, Sister.
Hi.
Yes. I'd like to welcome Sister Mercedes Ang, the president of St. Paul University Tuguegarao and St. Paul University of Vigan. My good friend. Thank you very much, sister. I know Tuguegarao is very far, so thank you. Thank you for joining us. Please sit down and catch your breath.
Please catch your breath.
We were just listening.
We were just getting started, yeah.
Yeah. But I have a question, Grace. When they mentioned this group that did the research about technology, what did they go into any detail as to what they meant by technology, or it was just they just mentioned it but did not?
Yes.
They only mentioned it.
And I'm really not sure that there are specific references that I can mention now.
Yeah.
But clearly, it's an area of interest. So if we were to help support maybe studies into this would be one area that we can
This is part of the problem, right? We see a lot of reports by many people, including distinguished researchers like you mentioned. But then, the moment they hit this area of technology or media, it becomes general. And yet for Sister Mercedes and I, these are serious questions of day-to-day management. How do our teachers teach? How do we use the technology? What are the safeguards that we should do? And what are the policy questions that should be addressed regarding this matter?
So let me just use some general principles. You're probably familiar with Dr. Christensen. He's speaking a lot about innovation, especially in the classroom. And one of his comments was that we talk about intervening in the education problem, and yet we're using 20th century models for 21st century industries now. But can we go to the academe? Maybe your comments about some of the things that Dr. Delisa mentioned, also some of the things that Mr. Yap said about using technology and media in the classroom.
My view in this is, number one, classroom is a fragile set.
Okay.
This idea is not mine. It's from Nassim Taleb's book, Anti-Fragile. Classroom is fragile. Meaning to say, babasagin, mas madali siya magkaroon ng problema.
Okay.
Then, Taleb says, real life is better than classroom. Now, as an educator, I know we do practical things in order that real life will be addressed. An example would be, my daughter is a graduate of Gasons. The classroom is supplemented greatly with actual community learning environment. So, over at San Andres, there's a Gasons there by Win. The teacher would say, today we go to St. Andrews Square, San Andres Market. visit the fruits, the vegetables, etc. So I think classroom plus real situation can add better learning environment. But the anti-fragile setting, according to Taleb, is not the classroom. It's just real life. Plus, he puts library, but I think it is really AI. Can real life be supplemented for the students with the use of technology? And then that brings you to the role of parents. My issue is really the first school should be the home. And the first teacher should be the parents. But where are the parents? We are busy working to make a living. So we are running on a very difficult setting here. So technology adds to actually expenses, not only for the parents but for the school. Then the environment, the real environment is not also conducive. So how do we solve the real life situation here? That would be my own dilemma.
Yeah. So do you think that when they talk about EdCom, I mean they should include, for example, parenting as part of the total package of interventions that the government should look at? The U.S., I think during the State of the Nation address of President Biden was suggesting that K-12 is not enough and that they should start at preschool. Right? I mean, going to your point, yeah.
I'm just using my own experience.
Yeah.
My wife stopped working for 5 years, and the pressure was on me. I took on 3 jobs. But the development of the child, I'm proud to say she's now vice president.
It was worthwhile, yeah.
Plus, of course, the supplement, we did not, sorry sister, we did not choose the Catholic school. I'm from LaSalle. My wife is from Assumption. We chose JASOMS using Montessori approach because I feel that the Catholic school is very good in discipline. LaSalle, one clap, sit straight, stand up, sit down.
That's from our generation. It's not like that anymore.
Green Hills, there are still clickers using Green Hills. So, I think the Montessori or the natural approach to learning, I think helped my daughter.
Sure.
Early decision making was really good, based on real experience.
Sure. Well, another thing that will help, according to some people, is just reading and talking to your children. Let's talk to the author in the group here, Ms. Marian de la Torre. You were talking earlier about your book. Maybe your inputs about how significant or how impactful it is for children and maybe even parents to read to their children.
Oh, very impactful. I think it starts, so my child now is 3 years old and I started reading to him at 2. And he started listening to my meetings because he's a pandemic toddler. He started listening to my meetings at 1.
Pandemic toddler, I like that. That's a new name.
So you can just imagine the kind of vocabulary that he has right now. And I'm sure that cuts across, that is shared among different, pandemic babies and toddlers too, because they hear their parents at home working, which actually brings me to another point. I mean, if you asked about what needs to be brought up, I think how future of learning and future of work intertwines. I think that's a very important discussion, because when we talk about innovation, when we talk about technology, these are merely platforms to where we want to be.
Sure.
And that also brings us to our mindset when it comes to problem solving. When we try to solve problems or issues in education or innovation, the number one thing that we need to look at is the long-term impact. And we break it down. This is the theory of change, right? Long-term impact, and we break it down to more measurable outcomes. Whether we borrow concepts or programs from other markets or other countries, or we ideate on our own based on grassroots solutions and grassroots issues, we can definitely borrow both, or we can apply both. But I think at the end of the day, it's really understanding how change works, and at the end of the day, it's really how all of these, because we have so many initiatives that seem to be scattered, and I think that's also stems from what Mr. Yap mentioned earlier. When we start talking about technology, we go vague, and I think that's because we don't really understand whole of society discussions, right? We don't talk to all the stakeholders that we need to get insights from, and that doesn't then bring us to the impact that we want to have.
Well, they do say that, one of the effective ways of resolving something is to work backwards, and you seem to be suggesting what is the outcome that we want to achieve, and then look at how we intervene in education. We're fortunate to have people here representing industries. You want to jump in on MAP? What do we want from our children about, what is the future of work as you see it? And maybe Mr. Luis Ortiz and Buboy, of course, can jump in later.
Well, first I wanted to comment on what Dr. Grace was saying about courage. That's very true. We need to instill courage into the next generation, especially those who are learning, because they may be scared to make the steps that they need. Even for adult programs, I think we don't have enough adult programs. So we're talking about education of the next generation, yes, very important. But what about upskilling the current generation that might need new skills to adapt to current technology? And having government also be open to adapting the upskilling of current government workers. For example, if a student wants to join government, they take the civil service. And for some particular jobs that they apply for, and to take the test in civil service, like for example, I'm going to talk about stenographers, because that's my CSR. My CSR is about government workers, they work in court stenographers. So if a student wants to become a court stenographer, they go to the civil service to take the civil service exam, and as part of their exam, they have to bring their own typewriter. Already at that, the students are like, I've been working on a computer, and now you want me to take this exam with a typewriter that I have to bring my own typewriter. But
Sorry, this is happening now.
yes. Okay. So already at the
2023.
beginning, after the student graduates, just to get into government to become a court stenographer, they have to bring their own typewriter to do the transcription. So we need to also try and work with government on how to modernize taking these exams so that we don't turn off the next generation, because that's a total turn off for the next generation.
No, and there's no place to buy a typewriter anymore.
Yes, I can tell you, I'm in the office equipment. There's not that many, there's hardly any manufacturers left. So that's one of the things.
Maybe they mean a keyboard, not a typewriter.
No, it's a typewriter.
Typewriter.
You mean the court still use a typewriter?
No, the civil service has the exam done using a typewriter for the transcript.
You would test them using one that they will not be using in their
That's
jobs
correct,
anyway.
Yeah, exactly. See, so we need to also update the technologies used in testing. So since you're in testing, that's one of the things we need to update the technology that is used, because in real life, they're not going to be using a typewriter to make the transcription.
And they use special machines. Stenographer use a very specialized machine.
Yeah. Well, we have two types of stenographers. The Greg shorthand, which is pen and paper, and the second is the machine stenographer. And, well, the machine stenographers have dwindled in population because there has been no training anymore for it. But there has been training in the schools, but when they get to the courts, there's just not anymore any equipment for them to continue. So equipping,
So don't look too far down the road. Let's look at the present generation, upskill them as well.
yes, to upskill the next generation.
All right. Mr. Luis, what does your group think about the final outcome and what should be now the focus of the people, policy workers in education?
Well, right now, we really have to look at the technology
Okay.
as something that will lose jobs, because there will be a lot of jobs that will be lost. Drivers, for instance, is gone.
With automation, yeah.
Some of the services things will be gone, no? And even now, there's already some sort of a mismatch when companies look for people so much more in the next generation, no? When everybody is still pursuing education that is not leading anywhere. And yet, we're still producing a lot of lawyers.
No
Lawyers
comment.
will disappear. And many doctors probably will disappear also because of the technology. So we really probably have to prepare for that. Even now, a lot of companies, last year, to the end of the pandemic, we tried to create 1 million jobs. It was supposed to be last year, December, it would have been met 1 million jobs. Because of the pandemic upsurge in August, we increased the level of the delay. So, but we met the 1 million jobs as promised. This is an incremental jobs last March. And then last May, we again, together with Dole, Meta, TTI, PCI, the export, the IBAP group, electronic group, manufacturers, and we promise again 1 million jobs. I have not really monitored at this point how many have been created already. But the ones very much involved in this are really complaining about mismatch.
Yeah.
And one bad thing that came out of this is people are, especially the new graduates, the computer techies, they feel like working at home is their privilege, is a right. So there will be offers of jobs, but some of them
They don't want to go to work.
thinking that there will be other jobs to be offered, no? Not knowing that there are a lot of people who are sidelined, will have to come in and are still being hired. No? So there is a big debate about K-12 graduates being hired against college graduates. No? And a lot of companies were saying, why don't you hire them? But it's really a question really of we have to really also plan the career developments of these people, and yet, we are even lowering the age of retirement. We are even lowering the and there are even a lot of push to hire disabled, to hire seniors, to hire whatever. But you block the development of the young ones by doing that. No? It's probably heartless to say, why should we not make McDonald's or Jollibee if they want to hire disabled over the young ones who just graduated and who need to earn a living also, when the debate is why are we forcing companies, or even there are even bills filed to compel companies to hire, well, among others, women, disabled or but the thing is um, you it is not applicable to a country where there is a lack of jobs. No, the ones who are seniors already they try to most probably they have already some savings, or they are already supported by the children who are working, no? And they have made plans for in the future. So if you compel them to companies to hire them, then you basically are telling the fresh graduates, diyan ka muna. Yun yan. So it's really a, I think we have to really preparing education is look at what is the future, what are the jobs that will come up, what are the jobs that will a lot of jobs will be lost because of technology, and we don't know how to deal with this.
That's why
Yeah, sorry. Welcome, Benji. This is Benji Palmahir, past president of the Philippine National Bank and former professor at the Asian Institute of Management. Yeah. So are we saying that there are really 3 or 4 separate problems that we're discussing? We're saying there are training and education questions for those who are in need of upskilling or retraining. Then second, we're saying that there are media and tech questions for those who are, let's say, already in school. Then there are separate issues for young people entering the educational establishment. And then there are media and tech questions related to what business requires. Are we segregating
At
it
least
that
there may
way?
be more. We haven't heard from everybody.
As of now,
Mr. Marabagan, maybe you travel back and forth the U.S. We see a lot of similar problems from the U.S. Ironically, they talk about the same things: teachers being overworked, problems with the curriculum. I mean, it's issues that we hear here as well. But what's your
Well, first of all, I was about to say that I was of course educated here, but I moved my family to Canada. So a couple of my kids were partly educated in the Philippines, maybe the eldest one up to grade 5, but they've been educated in Canada. So I've had an opportunity to
see the difference?
yeah, between the two in practical terms. First of all, there's obviously a big difference in cultures, right? Western and Asian cultures, and I would imagine that difference in culture is reinforced by the kind of educational system that each culture has. Now, speaking of the Western system, well, first of all, before we complain a lot about our quality sometimes of our education here, but you should see some of the American high schools, right? The graduates they have there, so they have their own problems as well, right? Now, the first thing I noticed about kids from at least the Philippines that I know, friends of my kids, in the Canadian or Western schools, is that there's really a difference in values.
Okay.
The West is, of course, the Asian values. It's more family oriented.
Okay.
And then the influence of the family on the kids, which is why maybe emotionally the Westerners in general tend to be more fragile. No? I mean, we don't have too many Filipinos going up to the roofs and shooting random strangers passing by, right? So earlier when you mentioned about trying to introduce values formation as early as possible, I would certainly agree with that. It would reinforce the good things about the Asian culture, and I guess the earlier the better. I don't know what you'd call it, maybe not religion, because now they might say there's a bias, but I don't know whether it's moral values or ethics or whatever, but something as early as possible that tries to feed kids that there's a certain proper way to behave in society and with other people. And hopefully the parents at home can reinforce that if somehow the system draws in the parents as well, right? And I would think that would go a long way towards affecting in the long run, the way the culture operates. Now, ultimately, this is supposed to be innovation. Now, the Western culture generally, I guess, would be the culture that's most successful in innovation. Most of the big innovations in the past century or so are either Europe or in terms of technology, we have Silicon Valley and so forth. So maybe there's something about the Western system that encourages innovation, whether it's encouraging people to be independent on their own. But on the other hand, there are also certain strengths of the Asian culture which are good for organizations, whether business or private. And these are the traits that instill harmony in organizations, because you need harmony also to get organizations to perform. So there are different modes here. But in general, just on one aspect, I would encourage here the introduction of basic Asian family or whatever values, ethical values, as early as possible. Now, the other thing I noticed, which was very glaring to me when I went to Canada and started interacting with some of the Caucasian parents there, in their schools there, as soon as they see an Asian student, they get intimidated. Oh, he or she must be good in math. That's true, huh? They all assume Asian students are good in math, and in many cases it is. No, they are. So I was thinking, what is it about Asia that creates good people? Well, maybe it's the discipline the parents impose on them to study hard, etc., and so that they become proficient in certain fields. But in looking at it, right here in the Philippines, there's a number of examples of really excellent schools in that regard, which I'm referring to. I have a niece who studies at Philippine Science. They're very good, and when she takes a vacation at our house in the province, she studies up to midnight. On her own. Yeah. So, what are the factors that allows us to produce Philippine science institutions and students, and is there any way to try and
to scale it?
Replicate that? No.
Yeah.
So those are just my basic thoughts on this whole field. I'm not an expert in education, but I just thought it's all has to take into account certain values instilled in the kid as early as possible, and a discipline to study, such as what we find in the Philippine science high school system.
Yeah. But when you look at the Asian experience, certain things are very clear. If you look at how Korea developed, if you look at Taiwan, if you look at post-war Japan, even to a lower extent Malaysia and Indonesia and now India, you see this rigorous commitment to not only studying hard, not worrying about personal stuff, or if you want in quotation mark values, but they are committing themselves to technology and now a lot of media. We should look at that.
Yeah.
Because, for example, for the last 10 to 15 years, the number one sought after employee in the US is an IIT graduate.
Okay.
Somebody from the Indian Institute of Technology. They're considered better than students from MIT and schools like that, because they say if you're an Indian Institute of Technology graduate, you are one of 3,500 accepted every year from 140,000 applicants every year. Testing is the key to their success. You look at Japan, Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, it's all about testing. But all their tests are moving to technology-based testing. all their tests are being updated and upgraded. You look at our accreditation approaches and tests. Boy, these instruments have been there since I had hair. So it brings us back to our topic. What are the issues in media and tech that will allow us to think of suggestions for the EDCOM, suggestions for the Secretary of Education, but suggestions for us as citizens who are interested in the social fabric of our society and its development. Now, there is a university president in our midst, and I'd like to hear from her because...
Yes, I was going to go to her. Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
you know, what Sister has done is to make a school in the province, in Tuguegarao, one of the top schools in Asia, recognized. When you talk of St. Paul University Tuguegarao, you're talking about the school that Sister Mercedes has created to be one of the best.
Tutuwa asawa ko riyan.
Okay, asawa niya. No, famous yan. There are people abroad who will say, no, St. Paul University Tuguegarao is a wonderful school. Of course, now she's president of 2 universities. I don't know how she can clone herself. But sister, maybe you can comment.
Thank you for that. I'm a practitioner of a comprehensive university, meaning from nursery to graduate school and even adult education. So for many years, experientially, we have really observed and we have analyzed what's really going on because during the pandemic, most of the private schools and universities died in enrollment, but the opposite happened to our university, St. Paul University, Philippines in Tuguegarao. From 4,000, we are now 10,500 plus, with more than up to 1,600 international students from 15 countries.
Wow.
So what we did was really, we came up with a framework which is really proactive, dynamic, and forward-looking. And then it's interconnected in terms of technology. We're talking about innovation and technology. Even after the pandemic, actually, technology and multimedia were already vital components of the learning process. Because of the millennials, we were talking of Generation X, Y, G, and now the Alpha generation. Many of us are veterans and baby boomers. So digital transformation, it was there already, just stepped up by the pandemic. So we already have the LMS even before the pandemic. So then the e-books or like that. But what is lacking is really the interconnectivity. So we have to make it interconnected, but different levels, because we have to target. And now we are targeting learning poverty for basic education and reskilling emergency for higher education. What do we mean by that? So nursery, they enter school as early as 3 years old. And from 3 years old up to 7 years old, it's really formative years for children. Tabula rasa, they believe their teachers more than their parents. But the parents, the family members, they are really partners in the schooling of the kids. It's very clear. And then formative years, it's really important because it's exploratory, it's really the character formation. Values formation should be in place because academics, social responsibility will be anchored on the values and character. The habits, the learning habits, and then the basic values in life, it will really matter. And then in higher education, it's really about skills and then soft skills also, because there is really mismatch, that's true. And then the pandemic, terrible. There is really learning loss, particularly with on-the-job training. If you are the employer now, you will be skeptical in hiring graduates who are products of the pandemic, because you know that they did not have actual on-the-job training experience. Different. So we're proposing that for DepEd and CHED, there should really be interconnectivity, fluidity, and blending of curriculum and instruction, because it should really be fluid, because education is lifelong. So the program should be aligned. That should be. And then for DepEd, our problem now is really on reading and STEM education. There is a gap in the literacy. Why? Because we have to, that's why basic is we have to teach the children about proper values and habits, study habits, learning values, so that even with the internet, whatever games, gamification should be channeled by the teachers in enhancing learning engagement, but the parents should not allow the children to be sleepless because of games.
Yes.
So, meaning, electronic gadgets should enhance learning. Surfing should be for learning. If you surf, you have to learn something, because information is not knowledge. We are a knowledge economy. We have to process information. There are so many fake news. So they have to know how to discriminate. So values would really matter. And the parents, the teachers, they are really vital to the values formation, because if the children will be disciplined and they know what websites to open and what websites not to open, then electronic gadgets are very useful to learning. So it's very clear. And then in higher education, we are graduating professionals, and there should be a close link between the industry and the academic, in terms of the design of the curriculum and instruction, and then the internship program. And then the faculty should both be practitioners and academicians, because you cannot be a good teacher in college if you don't have any immersion in the industry. There will be a gap of theory and practice, and the industry practitioner should have a say in what's going on. That's why if for schools of internationalized, they really survive during the pandemic. I can say it for myself, because SPUP, the university where I am assigned, we internationalized in 2015 with only 9 international students from Indonesia and India. Now we have more than 1,000, and still growing. Why? Because we focus on basic human rights. We are a Catholic institution, but we make them understand that evangelization is creative, because it's not a matter of religion, it's really spirituality, and how you practice your faith and how you respect the basic rights of every human being. So we have students who are Muslims, Buddhists, and then non-Christians, and we constructed 4 dormitories and then a worship room. So we orient them based on respect for human rights. So far, I'm 8 years in SPUP. I did not hear of quarrel or debate about religion or cultural differences. We just tell them that you are here on a mission, and when you go back to your own countries, you have to make sure that you have to contribute something about peace education, about productivity and prosperity, not only of your local community, but also the global community, because we have a common human destiny, and we belong to a global community, and a responsibility for each other as brothers and sisters. It's built in and inherent in our being human. So it's very clear. That's why when we ask them, why do you prefer to enroll at SPUP? We are not located in NCR. They say, because of the conducive learning environment. We feel that we belong. We feel that it's inclusive. We're not asked about what I mean, the focus is not on differences, but on the interculturality. And then we encourage also satellite of industry in the campus. So even third
St.
year,
Paul University.
the employers already can choose whom to
Siya ang
hire as
nagpalaki
interns.
dito sa small
And
schools
then,
na lumaki. Now
even
she's
before
president
graduation, they already write me that they are willing to pay for the board review, so long as the graduate will be their employee. They can hire first option. So it's more really of skills development, but soft skills also, especially communications. Because no matter how good the graduates are, they have to communicate not only oral and written, but also body language. What do you mean by body language? They have to be polite, they have to be sensitive, and then they have to be agile, and then, there are things which are left unsaid, but if you are sensitive, then you are fast. Even the eyes, the facial expression. So we train our graduates, particularly because our niche programs are in healthcare, and then HRM, and then IT also. So we train them that it's a mission. It's not only a profession. And then when you work, you give the whole of yourself, mind, heart, and soul, because it will spell out your destiny. And how meaningful is your life? Happiness is a choice. And then it's a decision. It should be holistic. It's not only that when you are hired, you ask how much is the salary or monetary rewards, and then the leave benefits, the perks. No. It's always an opportunity for service. There is a mission behind. You will be creating eternal impacts. And then think of people, planet, peace, and prosperity. And you will be all right. So, pandemic, beyond, you will survive because your basic goal is not only about gainful employment or entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, we teach them that, but it's really self-giving, and then value-added innovation, and then you consider your work as really part of your worship, and then you are creating a legacy. That's your personal brand. So I always hear feedbacks from HR. They will say, "Sister, when we interview your graduates, we already decide to hire them because there is depth, there is substance." So they don't only answer questions based on what they know or what they can do. There is no air of arrogance, but it's more of what we can do for others, because the fulfillment is really doing something out of mission, out of service, and contributing for nation building. So the university is closely linked with the industry and the government. So together, we do something for the country and for the people. And then for nurses, we know that they are highly in demand in other countries. I always tell them, I always talk to them, particularly for the fourth year. We do not educate you at St. Paul for you to migrate to the US. Think of our country, the Philippines. Think of the Filipinos who are sick and dying because of shortage of workforce in the hospitals, in the rural areas. So I'm not saying that you have no permission to leave the country, but please prioritize first the Philippines. At least serve the country for a minimum of 2 years or more. And then that's it. So that you have a point of comparison, because we also have hospitals and there's really shortage. So something like that. And for the little ones, particularly for nursery, We simulate. We simulate the classroom as if it's a home. We make it so homey. So in the nursery, there is a portion, of course, classroom, there is a portion like bedroom, merong beds, and then there is a sala with reading materials, and then television, and then there is a playroom. So they feel that they're not in school, meaning we blend. So they learn at the same time, it's fun. So they feel, particularly from nursery to grade 3, because content learning, meaning one teacher only. With grade 4, they have different teachers already. So they love the school. They are more productive. They do not, they are not antagonized by the rigorous process of learning. So the focus is not on learning as work, as they are harassed their time, they do not enjoy, but learning as fun. We want them to see the big picture, because we are training you, we are grooming you to develop your God-given talents, and you will become your full potentials as a human being will be developed, and you will make a difference, and your parents, your country will be proud of you. Something, what we really develop in them is you are loved, so that their self-esteem will be intact. Even with students from dysfunctional families, by the way, we accept, because some are so strict, especially if they come from single parents or dysfunctional families. We don't discriminate. We know the background. We tell the teachers, no discrimination. So children are loved and accepted for what they are. They have to belong. If they have absentee parents, then we will be the foster parents. And then we have to make them loved, cared for, that they belong, and then the school is also their home. So that when they grow up, they love learning, and then they believe that they are agents of social transformation. That diploma does not end in graduation. It's lifelong, and then it's eternal salvation. That is their goal. And they have to give back. If ever they are successful, it's because it's for a mission, and they have to help others who are needy and poor.
So, sister, how much technology are you using in St. Paul University?
Actually, we have advanced facilities.
What is the role of technology as you see it?
We have
Not today only, but let's say 10, 20 years from
we
now.
are becoming a smart university.
What does that mean, sister? What's a smart university?
Network. Meaning, when you enroll, you can enroll online. We have an in-place website. You can do everything online. You can pay online. You can serve online. The parents will see the grades, the outstanding balance online. The website is clear about what's going on in the classroom, real time.
Do they have to go to school?
Yes. Yes.
No, I mean, can they just study online and never go to school?
No, they go to school, but it's in school they are introduced also to high-plex learning, because we have classrooms wherein they have classmates who are not in the Philippines. So they are there physically, but they have also classmates who are not there. And then the teacher teach, but they see those who are not there will hear and will see what's going on, and they will also see and hear what's going on, and the teacher can ask others who are not there to recite. And then, so when there are learning activities, they can also interact with their classmates from different nationalities. So it's advanced, and then it's network, and then the teacher also can manage a classroom which is local. And then in the examples, because we integrate sustainability, so that they will care about environmental stewardship, and then we make sure that the students will harness the power of the fourth industrial revolution, advanced technologies to create solutions to real life problems as early as grade 2 and grade 3, because we have coding education. They can already come up with robots. I remember before the pandemic, our grade 3 students after the eruption of Taal volcano, they came up with an ash bot, a robot, a small robot in their little minds. They thought of helping clean up the ashes from the volcanic eruption. And then our grade 6 students came up with a digital doctor during the pandemic, so that those who are sick and then who don't have access to doctors and hospital, they can use the digital robots for prescriptions about over-the-counter medication. So things like that. We develop also critical thinking, and then they are using technology to make learning more engaging, and then to develop their critical thinking, and so that they can focus on the big picture, so that their time will not be distracted by manual, things. So technology has a big role in making learning more engaging, interesting, and real time.
All right. Well, Mr. Palmahil, maybe we haven't heard from you yet. Maybe if you can comment on maybe what are some of the practical challenges in operationalizing some of the things that Sister Ang was saying.
I'll start off with this comparison.
Okay.
Thing that I was hearing between Western Asian education. I had the opportunity to live in the United States, and I saw how they were doing things. And to some extent, everything you're saying here makes a lot of sense. Testing, for example. My boy, who was not very sports-minded, I enrolled in a program called the AYSO, the American Youth Soccer Organization. And apparently the way they do things is they go through a testing process the way we do it here too. There's this huge organization. They have children enrolled from the start, and there was an involvement of parents and children. The soccer coaches were the parents, they were volunteers, so there was a community-wide interaction that was run across the whole of the United States with the sole goal of developing soccer fans. The United States is not very well known in the soccer medium. So they had this huge plan where they essentially said, we're going to enroll children, we're going to involve parents who know a bit about the game, and then we will start harnessing the talents and bring them up to a better level. In a sense, I guess education is like that. We all start off with grade school. Those of us who can, and in the United States, they've set their standards at high school. That's when they wean people away from those who will move on to college. So I'm seeing us do this in a way. We just have to decide what programs we really get into. You've decided, it would seem, to focus on technology, and I always remember one incident in AIM when I was teaching there, where Gabi Mendoza, then president of AIM, was hobnobbing with the Japanese and the Korean trustees. And he was laughing because the Japanese trustee at that time was trying to get more info from the Korean trustee. And he was saying it looks like the Japanese are scared of the Koreans. They're going to come in and take control of the technology that is rising in Korea. And true enough, now Trinitron, Sony, is no longer as highly regarded, in my view, as LG or Samsung in TV sets. So there has been this major change. And I was thinking to myself, what is causing this? Well, there's a lot of focus on technology and engineering. The Koreans decided to do this. The Irish also did this. They decided that they were going to be good in the area of technology. The other thing that I found out was that in visiting Korea, they've decided a lot of the children have been inculcated with the concept of becoming K-pop stars. So I found out that it was not unusual for parents to give their kids with the facial surgery at the age of 15. And that's why you'll see that these guys are starting to all look alike. They essentially, just look at it. Essentially, there was a groundswell for something that they wanted to achieve. And this started at younger ages. The question, therefore, to me, has always been, what do we want to be? What do we want to achieve? And a lot of that will have to do, in my view, with taking into account our situation. When I was young, the focus was on land reform, rice, agriculture. Then I was thinking to myself, our country is an archipelago. We don't have the land resources that Australia would have, or the United States, or China. So why are we focusing so much on agriculture per se, other than the bare necessary minimum to get us to become self-sufficient, food security? But is this our be-all and end-all? The thought that I had, of course, was, if you look at land that we have and the way we develop our own resources, and you examine a place like Boracay, that's, I don't know, 20 hectares or something like that, generating $2 billion dollars in revenue. And then you look at all the emotion we put into talking about land being sacred for farming. I wonder if we have the right targets. Because from there, everything flows down. If we target that we're going to be the best farmers in the world, is it volume production that we're after? Or is it low volume, high value? And I think more than anything else, that is where we begin. Once you have an idea of what you want to do, then the mechanism of creating a program, testing and weaning away those who are not suitable and gathering those who are, creating the educational institutions to focus on what we need to do, that will follow. And you can create the testing mechanisms that Tony was talking about to let this thing develop. So, just picking up your thoughts,
Interesting
I think
thing.
that's where
Yeah.
we should go.
One of the things we wrote about in the Manila Times is that what's missing from the national discourse is a maritime agenda, but I don't think that's a topic for today. But you were going to say something
Yeah.
before I interrupted you.
Listening to what everyone was saying, character formation, one of the things that I don't hear about is about civic duty. Nobody talks about doing their civic duty in the Philippines. And John F. Kennedy had this famous, what he said in one of his speeches, do not ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And that leads us to do civil action. We're not talking about protesting, but we're talking
ROTC?
about what can we do for our country to make it better? Do we just stay quiet and let things be? Do we not vote and let whoever just be there because it doesn't affect me? Or because, well, even if I vote, it's not going to make any difference. And so when we're doing character formation for the young, I think part of that character formation is civic duty. What you can do for your country. Help your country, maybe stay in the country for 3 years before you migrate or become an OFW, diba? Or if you do go out and become an OFW, bring back the knowledge instead of brain drain, bring back the information so that we can develop further. Diba? So I think that's one of the things.
Brother Obed, you.
It's a feast of wisdom that I'm having here, and I can't but share with you something. I'm enrolled now in my doctorate, so tayo circle here. I was made to report Dr. Saison sa Philo 376 about the first 3 chapters of John Dewey book, 1916, and I was reporting about environment. He mentioned, but that's very different from the environment now because of social media. So that gave me an idea to write a paper that will ask by Dr. Saison. And in one of my findings in the terminal paper I gave is this, for us to digest. The Philippines ranked first among the 45 countries in terms of spending most time in social media platform. So lagi tayong top. Given that we have one of the slowest Wi-Fi connection. Galing, di ba? So, sobrang galing. The reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I'm also a recovery coach and transformative coach. 2020, August, I was tasked to give a talk among the youth of Quezon City government. And the topic that was assigned to me to speak about was how to avoid suicide. And I told the organizers, can we tone down a bit with the topic because it's so strong. You have to speak about it. And after speaking around 45 minutes, I have 10 engagements after. And apparently, by God's grace, they were in the suicidal ideation stage already, and they were helped a bit. The reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I'm also feast builder of Feast Manila. I was a feast builder, where thousands of young people are attending the live prayer meetings. Thousands. Priests would attend and they would say, Brother Obed, how are you able to gather thousands every Friday? 3 sessions of thousands of students. I don't know, probably a miracle from the Lord. Pandemic came in, we lost this number. What happened? And apparently in one conversation with a priest friend, Father Mario Bihe, he said that people nowadays are hyper-connected with billions of people, but internally disconnected. So which brings me to the issue of, I'm so inspired by Sister. We have now a guest in our philosophical education conference on November. We'll contact you. So I came across in the study, power distance index. And apparently, we are a family-based culture in the Philippines, but the power distance index is so high. We're 94, Indonesia 78, whereas the United States is 40. Yung madaling kausapin ang mga superior, like father, mother. And which forced me or inspired me to write a book. Within the year I'll be writing it, Tony. And I will call it Let's Talk, because children nowadays are afraid of that invitation to Let's Talk. And apparently I will be co-authored by my wife, and my wife is now administrative director in Anawim, the Bo Sanchez home for the abandoned elderly. I have an 18-year-old son who's also studying in UP. Magka-schoolmate na kami ngayon, ma'am. By the way, Dr. Grace is beloved in our university. And my 13-year-old daughter. So I'm co-authored by my family. We'll be writing about Let's Talk. Because precisely that Sir Tony, we discuss about the culture of coaching, the culture of safety. All roads are leading to that. And as my philosophy of education, I'm into social reconstructivism. You speak a little and then let's converse, like what's happening now. All roads are leading to that. Iba-iba lang po ang title, sister. Safe place, circle of truth, circle of communication. Lahat po yun. I believe that the high-tech technology, what is being said here is for utility and also yung sabi dito sa social dilemma. There's something about social media that is alarming. And in one of my findings, sabi dito, there are only two industries that call their customers users. Illegal drugs and software. This is social dilemma of Netflix. So pinagbangga ko po yung prinsipyo ng 1916 material ni John Dewey at yung 2020 material ng Netflix ni McDavid. And this they're finding there's a call to an inward journey while making social media platform for utility only, because they will keep on, kasi the reason why we are users is because we are being used. When there is no product, we are the product. The ads company will just come in pagka maraming mga viewers and so on. So there's a call for conversation, there's a call for conference. And I think yun yung advocacy na sinasabi ni Dr. Grace kanina. Bringing us to honesty, truth, fairness, and courage. Pag-uusap ng mga tao. There's beauty in live discussions. There's oxytocin that is being pumped, and there's so much connection. So that's my idea.
Can we circle back to what Tony was saying earlier about technology, media? How do you imagine the future classrooms to be integrating media, technology? What would be the role? I mean, the issues are, as Dr. Delisa was telling us, there's this ethical consideration about technology evolving faster than our ability to ethically use it. There are, as Sister said, the issue also of what role do schools play versus what parents play, and what cooperation or partnerships they make. And the larger context of that, of course, is that the Philippines has a lot of OFWs, and we all have heard about the social costs that we suffer because of it, leading us to question whether or not are the parents there, not to mention are they capable, are they there to begin with to guide their children to use those technologies ethically and effectively. So maybe the question is, how do you imagine the future classrooms to be, integrating media and technology, and given that there are so many other, Mr. Makapagal, you want to, maybe there's something in Canada that.
No, I was just thinking though, when you talk of technology, how do you use it and so forth, in a sense it drives itself. I mean,
Okay.
I'm just wondering just now, of the amount of Wi-Fi usage, let's say just in the Philippines, how much is devoted to education-related?
Very little, probably.
Very little, I guess,
Yeah.
right? So in a sense, there's a monster out there you're trying to
rein in, yeah.
Yeah. It'll drive itself, and then the kids they'll access what they want. So I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, what about Dr. Otto?
I really think the role of the teacher, if the jobs, has been diminished, technology is reducing the role of the teachers. I mean, I used to ask my daughter, for things that were current. And you know what she would tell me? Dad, you Google it. So the new teacher is really good. I do research. I was telling of it earlier. No? It's easier to write papers now using documents to back up what you say, and you just search. So really, so the world is now the new classroom, and AI is the new teacher of the future. And Noble Harari warned us 21 lessons in the 21st century. Will AI control us and convert us as Homo Deus, like gods, but because of our technology? Or, as we are trying to do, make AI as our servant and we not as slaves? I really think we have, the future is, when you think about it, is a crazy scenario where the roles are changing. And I don't know how prepared we are for that.
Well, but on the other hand, like, you know, all of us, I think, probably noticed in the past, 10, 15 years, Ateneo and UP no longer have a monopoly on bar top-notchers, right? It's because provincial schools, provincial students in any remote law school now has an access to all the law books, which before you only used to find in the conference room of the big law firms, right?
Yeah.
So technology has sort of democratized, access to information. So I guess, like I said, it'll be driven by itself, but maybe the flesh and blood teachers and the educational system can still have a role in encouraging, just pushing the students towards certain uses of technology.
Dr. Dalisay, I mean, I think of all people here, I think you're the one who, who's been researching this topic, right?
But before I go into that, just a comment on civic duty.
Sure.
And you ask, what would I want EDCOM to highlight finally? And I think it's really the civic duty, the social responsibility of students. We have a very strong volunteering movement in the world and in the Philippines as well. So I was, Tony mentioned that I was with the Ugnayan ng Panginoon, which is the institutional volunteer service program of the UP system. And there are organizations that actually bring together the volunteering groups of different universities. I'm sure Sister has on at SPUP. But the thing is that this is sort of a marginalized activity. No, it is not given due recognition. So when universities, for example, talk about the main functions of universities, teaching, research, and extension. But extension is a bit murky. No? It doesn't really focus on volunteering as an avenue to contribute what the university has learned. So I think that one is something that hopefully educational leaders in the different aspects, regardless of level, area of specialization, can recognize and give due support. As we know, it really needs the CEO buy-in to make that fly. So it has to be the president of the university. And if we do it that way, it's a little spotty, But if we had a statement from the government, from the Department of Education, CHED, etc., saying that this is an integral aspect of the development of a student, then I think that will be better for our country. Now on technology, yes, there are many possibilities. True, we're now talking about AI, and I mentioned that ChatGPT now, which is having some people in a frenzy because you put anything, each one of us can type our names and ask ChatGPT to come up with our biodata. And it would sound really nice, maybe one or two wrong things said about us, but it sounds pretty good. And some people are worried about this because it's an avenue for plagiarism, for cheating mainly. However, some have said, well, actually we can use this ChatGPT as maybe a case study, or have students, I know one professor says, okay, my assignment for you is to make ChatGPT write the essay that I'm asking you to write. Then, look at it. Look at the essay. Is that good enough for you? If that is, submit it. Let's see what grade you get. And what did you learn from it? But if you're not pleased with it because it is not up to par, then you write your own. So in that way, it's also teaching students, no? To think critically. And I think alongside all the developments in engineering and technology, we really have to step up also in developing critical thinking, because that is what will help students know what they can take in, what is useful for them, what is appropriate, okay, and critical thinking with values. I think there's no way we can do away with values. I mentioned courage earlier. So it's important for us not only to know what is right and wrong, but to stand our ground, to know that this is what is right. And therefore, when I look at all this technology that's coming up, when I see all these films, whatever media offers, then I'm able to make that decision as to what I shouldn't watch. It's on screen, but that's not right for me. I don't see why I should watch it. That's the important thing I think that we need to have. It's not that we shouldn't give children, or students, or even adults access to all these new things, because that's where we're going. That's what it is now. But it's really the moral fiber, the critical thinking, to make decisions as to what is appropriate and what will contribute to the advancement of our society.
So how do we translate that into metrics? I mean, when you say, well, talk about testing, right? What do we test for? I mean,
for if I may just share the work that we do in CEM, the Center for Educational Measurement, based on the tests that we have, we're able to identify the areas where children would have difficulty. Something even like we find that there's difficulty in terms of reading comprehension, and reading is such a foundational skill.
Yeah.
We need to be able to read to understand math and science and all the other subjects. That's why we're starting with that. So given that, then we develop interventions to help children. I'm talking about children in grade 4 is usually where they start testing for reading, and then develop these programs to help students with that, but also all the more the teachers, to identify how to deal with these difficulties. There are many different areas that we can do. So we can look at the different areas of a particular skill and then develop interventions for each one. That's
I want to bring up this related to technology. There are some conflicting studies in the past that I've seen. PIDS was saying that there is a dangerously low level of interest among learners to study science and mathematics. There was a contradicting report coming from DOST, but I think their final report will not come out until a few more months, saying the opposite. And of course, when you talk about technology, or talk about the future, encouraging our learners to take up science and mathematics is very important. What are your thoughts? Because PIDS was saying that if their research is validated, it's not a simple matter of giving more grants or money to students. There's something that has to change fundamentally in, I guess, enticing students to become interested in science and mathematics. I think the hurdle is that they think it's a difficult field. It's a very challenging field, so they opt to look at other things, maybe hospitality. Not that it's a bad industry, but I'm saying that if we want to improve our country, right? I mean, that's something that we should be looking at. I mean, related to media and technology in the classroom. Go ahead.
Everything starts at the top.
Okay.
Everything starts with leadership. And if leaders will say, okay, we've got AI and we're going to use AI to replace the workers, then no one's going to want to take that craft. And then when we lose the craft to AI or to robots. And so what happens when we look for that skill and AI is actually not doing it correctly? So technology is not supposed to be meant to replace people. There are declining populations in other countries, and so therefore they're forced to use AI to do things that humans do. But in countries like in the Philippines, we have a growing population. Congressman Salceda told MAP a few days ago that we have 70 years before the Philippine population
Declines, yeah.
So we have so much human labor, and to think that we're going to be implementing AI and people will be losing jobs is actually not the right way for us to go as leaders in the Philippines. So we shouldn't be thinking of technology to replace humans or to replace the skill. We should be thinking about technology on augmenting the efficiency of the volume of work that needs to be done, not to replace people. And we've got to remember that we need to keep humans at the center. I mean, this is part of the transformative leadership that we learned at MAP for the next generation, that you use technology to help speed, to increase efficiency, to augment what challenges come, but the humans are at the center. And as leaders, we cannot forget that humans should be at the center of all of this. And innovation brings us to scale, to bring us to new heights. Probably this is what they did in Korea. With all their innovation, they came to new heights. But still, in the center of that are humans, and we shouldn't forget that. Would we want our fates to be in machines or in the hands of humans? So as leaders, we need to decide,
Well, Mr. Luis, you were saying earlier that, we should be expecting a lot of job losses.
I have a friend
Okay.
who was really school,
Okay.
and he had less than 30,000 students before.
Wow.
Now, during the pandemic, it increased to about 40,000.
Wow.
And the earning, I think, is, he gave me a lot of scholarship there, even though they say you're earning a lot now.
Wow.
And the reason is, I think, lower overhead, even salaries of teachers, less teachers, because they were online, and I think they're bringing a lot of money. But I think it's a transition, and once the additional students now, I think it was very convenient. It's very convenient. So I have a feeling that eventually schools will be less and less relevant.
Okay.
And and the only reason they will be there is because of the testing and the diploma.
Yeah. The certification.
Certification and diploma. So I think you'll be losing, 20 years from now, 10, 20 years from now, it's going to be less and less relevant. And I don't know, it's just a feeling that it will be that. The same manner doctors and lawyers will disappear, teachers also
I wonder, is AI going to pay taxes in the future if all these people have no jobs?
No, but that's a good segue to our last quarter of this discussion, last 30 minutes.
Okay.
And maybe I can recall EDCOM 1.
Okay.
Okay, and the context of EDCOM 1, because that comment of June is interesting about this disappearing thing. What was in EDCOM 1? Maybe some of us remember it, I do. And during EDCOM 1, there were a few very interesting things they did. First thing they did was they split the Department of Education
The three groups.
into three. Instead of a Bureau of Technical Ed, which used to be the NMYC, you're back to NMYC, but it's called TESDA.
Yeah.
Instead of Bureau of Higher Ed and Bureau of Basic Ed, you now have
CHED.
DepEd from the old DEX, and you have CHED.
Yeah.
What is the significance of that change? CHED says you cannot go online or hybrid unless you're at a certain level of accreditation.
Yeah.
But accreditation is not done by CHED. It is done voluntarily through private groups.
Yeah.
Therefore, CHED has abdicated its responsibility in taking care of the quality of education of the country. That's an EDCOM 1 result. And the only country that followed us was Thailand. They had all our problems. So what did they do a few years ago? They merged it back. And when they merged back their higher ed and basic ed, their quality started to improve. That is illustrative for EDCOM 2. And second, although they have also voluntary accreditation, their higher education is not crazy about it. It is the government recognition and quality control program that is important. Now, is that critical? Yes. Because unless you have that, then the really imaginative guys, the young guys with new learning institutions, new training centers, new schools, will continue not to be able to offer their courses. Whereas a Thailand and an Indonesia, they can do it because they do not wait for you to be accredited. So that is something for us to think about when we look at the role of media and tech in education. What is another result of EDCOM 1? EDCOM 1 was created at a time when technology did not have any problems of connectivity, any problems of bandwidth, any question about social media. They had no Google. They had no Facebook. And certainly no ChatGPT, no AI, no idea about this issue of self-learning, which everybody used to say was important, that the way to learn was experiential, was through exposure. That's why the big thing during EDCOM 1 was OJT, on-the-job training. They did not worry about the combination of private-public partnership, because what did the businesses want? They wanted the cheapest workers with the highest credentials. That's why the government started allowing people who did not own their facilities, who did not own their equipment, to put up schools. That is why you had a school as big as this room calling itself a college. That is after EDCOM 1, that's when you had the franchises. EDCOM 1 is when you started branching, multiple locations. Before, you have one Ateneo. You have one this, you have one. Suddenly, you have multiple locations. But the biggest impact of EDCOM 1 was the Congress saying, let us give free education. So the issue there for EDCOM 2 is structural. What is the role of the private sector? Is it still what it says in the law creating CHED and what is in the Constitution? That we are one country, and therefore the left and right pocket are in the same shirt, and therefore the private and public sector are equal. But they're not equal. And that is an issue for EDCOM 2. With media and tech, theoretically, that should not be an issue, but it is. So, let us think about EDCOM 1 and what that resulted in. The last result of EDCOM 1 was the move away from ROTC. And in the old days, ROTC was where you taught civic duty. Also, under EDCOM 1, you had all of these government scholars being required to do rural service. Look at those in medical. And it was going to be a move where all scholars of the government had to render rural service. Not only did that not materialize, but they removed the requirement for rural service. Suddenly, your curriculum, your programs are legislated. The determinant of our educational system is Congress. It's no longer CHED, DepEd, etc. And therefore, it's natural that you will remove the academic independence of the schools. Now, media and tech is supposed to be the great balancing act. At least that's what I hear from a lot of educators. So what is the solution? What will happen is that everybody will offer vocational programs, because vocational programs cannot be controlled by CHED. But that is a mestizo solution. So for us, that's why we have this topic. Does media and tech really represent the ability to bridge between EDCOM 1 and 2 and EDCOM 3, 4, and 5? Or has the fundamental landscape changed? And should we, who are leaders, start thinking maybe media and tech is really a solution waiting to be taken advantage of? What do you guys think?
Oh, Sister Ang, you run the school. What do you think? I mean,
I would like to emphasize the cliche that pedagogy should be the driver and technology the accelerator.
Wow.
There's a lot of wisdom on that. And then we are looking forward to the dawning of Education 5.0, which will be human-centric use of technology. So there's still technology, but the centerpiece will be how to use technology or utilize the advanced technologies at the service of people or to benefit people. And values will be the anchor, because we cannot talk about benefits to people, planet, and the peace, education, and prosperity unless there are values behind. So we will be fine so long as we don't lose focus. We just would need a framework and then see the big picture, so that we will really make the human being as the core, and then technology to enrich the learning process, the economic repercussion will follow quality education. And then let's not forget sustainability, because no matter how good our ideas are, if we do not think of sustainability, then it's just short term.
Sister, should the government pay for better bandwidth? Because media and tech are not possible without bandwidth.
Actually, the government is already funding the SUCs, the LUCs, and then even funding...
No, but they're not getting bandwidth. They're financing it, but their bandwidth is still bad. Remember, bandwidth is different from just paying for the service.
Usually bandwidth is really if you are subscribing to PLDT or Globe.
Actually, the problem is the bandwidth for the entire country. It's the pipe coming down, not just paying for it, sister. It's more than that.
So they have to think of geographical locations and then to identify strategic points.
Actually, it's all about satellite links. It's all about the company of Elon Musk and its impact on the world. There's no other question. It's all about...
it's starting here, right? I mean, I
Yes.
know they're talking to the ICT.
But they're not talking to the schools. They're talking to the ICT. They're not thinking that everything we're talking about is anchored on only one question. And the schools are not discussing that question, which is bandwidth. They think it's connectivity and budget. No, it's beyond that. It's bandwidth. It's getting 700, 800 Mbps in the smallest school. It's ensuring that the upload speed is a minimum of 100 Mbps and not lower per machine. You have 20 computers, you divide it by 20 computers, and your up is going to be much slower than your down.
So what Buboy was saying, you know, these things are changing rapidly, right? But how do
Yes.
we ensure that they use it for instructional materials rather than TikTok or something else? Because as you said,
that's where you get into values.
It's there. You need to somehow.
But the question of
Yeah.
money, I think we should look at bandwidth essentially the same as physical infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to build the highways? The government,
Yeah,
right?
it has to be government.
It has to be government. Otherwise, schools don't have the financial capabilities. Will be left behind.
Yes, and the EDCOM 2 discussion has no agenda on bandwidth. They have agenda on connectivity, which I think misunderstands the problem. Anyway, that's just...
We experienced that before the pandemic. We increased in computer laboratories, and we were told by PLDT subscribe to 600 bandwidth from 200, and then the pandemic. So it was useful to us because we have 600 bandwidth. Compared to the other schools, it was so difficult already for them to increase their bandwidth because of the TikTok and then the Netflix. And even if you increase your bandwidth, still there sometimes, most of the times, slow internet connectivity because it's diverted in other Wi-Fi use, something like that. I think we have to, that's a good point.
Well, I think the government now, I think it was during President Duterte's time, they have I think finally picked up a national broadband plan, which was first time we heard it was with Mrs. Arroyo, but unfortunately because of the controversy, nothing replaced it, and we suffer now because of it, right?
And they forgot to include schools in the conversation.
They forgot to include schools.
They think it's a business problem.
Well, they were talking about LGUs, but
Yes.
you mentioned something else interesting about the partnership between the private and the public schools. I mean, the Constitution mandates a complementarity between private and public schools in the system.
And EDCOM has not agendaed again that in that discussion.
Yeah. But what should that partnership be? I mean, no, that's the problem. That it's in the Constitution, but since 1986, no one's introduced.
Now I'll share something.
Rule. Okay, go ahead.
Although I'm supposed to help, but
Yeah.
when Brother Andrew became Secretary of Education, we were talking, and I told him, brother, in 6 months we will solve all your classroom problems, which by the way is the same as now. I said, it's very simple. Instead of building classrooms, you keep your money, improve your teacher, put in labs, etc., and then offer to enroll all incoming students in private schools. All you have to do is tell the private schools, this is the minimum standard. You don't even have to pay a single peso, just pay for the students. And they will upgrade their facilities. Because of his controversy, that went away. Today, that's still a valid question, except now, from 90% of the enrollment in basic education being in private schools, it's now 9%.
99, I think.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the question is, have all the classrooms built replaced what was generally considered very good education across Asia? And the answer is no, because they replace an academic question with a construction question. They thought that when you construct the rooms, you're okay.
Yeah.
The second problem they did was, once you construct the room and you need classrooms, what you should do is train them. They pirated from the private schools, but it's one packet. So when you transfer good teachers to another packet, you create two problems. First, who will replace the investment in the training of those teachers? And remember, they're only hiring the good teachers with advanced degrees. So now you've discouraged the private school from investing in higher education because they're all going to be pirated. Now you've discouraged them from hiring the best teachers because the best teachers will be pirated.
Yeah.
So you will hire the ones who are not the best. Where are they? In schools that are legislated by the government, who do not take entrance tests, who do not go to CEM. And you create a spiral. Because if that person knows 100%, the next one will know 98, then 95, etc. We have now had 30 years of that. So, EDCOM 2 should address that issue of, will you go against the Constitution or implement it? Because remember, it's a constitutional matter. Except the private schools are not only fewer, but they're not going to go to court. You cannot fight City Hall. And so, media and tech, many schools thought, might be the solution, except Ched came down hard and said, you cannot do online education. You must be autonomous. You must be level 3 up. And then we asked them, but your instrument does not address a situation with high technology, bandwidth, etc. Because these instruments did not address that. And they're using the same instrument prior to what happened in the pandemic. And those instruments take years to upgrade and change. So only a change can do it. That's why I thought this conversation will be an input to them without mentioning the names of the discussants, but then we discuss it. You have told us that in
Not mentioning it, but it's being fed live on on our website.
Yes, I know, I know, but I meant that in the sense that this will become a proper paper.
Yes.
Okay, and with everybody's agreement, that paper either will have our signatures or will not, but will be postulated in a way that raises certain questions. But now with data.
Yeah.
With data. So I'm not summarizing yet. I'm only trying to say that this conversation would be incomplete without remembering these things.
Good points.
If I may.
Go ahead.
I chat GPT this on my way here.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan. And just on your point on plagiarism, there's actually a new platform also driven by AI that checks if the essay was plagiarized. So back to your question, I think related to Sir's point also on how would a future classroom look like?
Sure.
And you were saying schools are going to be rendered irrelevant. And I think to a degree that's true if schools do not adapt. If schools do not adapt to what is needed by the world, by society, by the Philippines, by Filipinos, by teachers, by parents, by students, I think that adaptability factor is a very crucial message because that also allows us to personalize the learning that we can give to the students, to the learners, right? And that can be driven by technology, that can be driven by innovation like AI or even the metaverse or the blockchain or cryptocurrency. There's so much in the discussion that's not being put on the table. I think we should embrace these technologies as solutions. Again, to the point on human centricity, we are the drivers of technological advancement. Without people, there's not gonna be any Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a person. So I think adaptability, but also flexibility. To the second point on hybrid, high flex conversation. Flexibility is important because that allows access to education. That democratizes the education, of quality education. That provides access to better appreciation for D&I, more women, more IDDs, individuals with developmental disabilities in greater or higher quality learning environments. And I think lastly, a future classroom would have better appreciation for continuous learning too. It doesn't just stop at a BA or an MA or a PhD. You have all of these micro certifications now, and even at executive level, right? They're ongoing. So I think those three: it's adaptability, flexibility, and continuous learning.
Just to add on to what he said, and the importance of human centricity, we see all the maybe flaws with the advancement of technology, and then see its flaws. But it's also the human person who finds solutions to this. So, for instance, ChatGPT, but we also have turned it in, and all these big groups now say, okay, these are the ways to check whether this is fake or not. So it's still the person who decides what problems are offshoots of these new developments and how do we put forward solutions.
Yeah. Well, final question from me. I mean, if talking about adapting, it's not just a matter of whether we adapt or not. It's also whether we adapt as fast as our competitors are adapting. And so do we go at a pace where we see schools becoming irrelevant because industry has certain needs and schools are not meeting it? Is it because we're not using the available technology to us, or maybe there's some difference in understanding concepts such as, broadband and connectivity? What should be done if we are not adapting enough? I think there may be some agreement there that we need to do more, right, relative to our competitors, but what should be done? And I guess that's my final point. Maybe we'll start with Mr. Palmahil.
I really just wanted to ask if anybody knew what was happening. There's a huge resource here. Well, the Philippines passed a law allocating certain funds for free internet. I remember that there were offers from the government to provide funding to anybody who would do certain provinces. And I was thinking about that some time ago, and I was looking at Department of Education, and first background, the problems seems to be with connectivity was the difficulty in putting up towers. And part of the reason, of course, was because the two big ones wanted to have towers in and of themselves instead of sharing. So we ended up with less towers than, for example, Indonesia. If there were at that time 8,000 towers that were owned by Smart, 8,000 by Globe, the people only had access to 8. And so some people started, that I knew of, started to try and put up those towers to allow for greater connectivity. And the problem was the difficulty of getting people to agree to allow those towers to be put up. That was the single biggest problem, getting approvals from the local government, approvals from the landowner, etc., etc. But then I looked and I saw, you have two significant resources: the schools, the public schools, and the churches. They have land. They are in the most far-flung areas. It is not difficult to put up those towers if they agree to allow, say, free rent in exchange for allowing
Connectivity.
access.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, where are we on this? Because the last time I checked, only 1/3 of the budget for those interconnectivity had been used. There was failure, despite the fact that there was money. And a lot of it had to do with the difficulty and the expense of putting up those towers. So I was thinking to myself, it's tough to do it with the Catholic Church because each diocese has its own boss. And you have to deal with so many dioceses. So I was saying maybe even the iglesia might be better. You only have to talk to one. And if you want to spread the gospel, you could do it readily as a quid pro quo for just allowing this. You didn't need to put in the kind of towers that Smart or Globe would, because they need cellular pabigat, so it's expensive. But just all these newfangled boxes for internet, they're not heavy, they're not expensive. They can be done, pero mahal, magastos. Ang one, getting to find out and deal with the owners of the locations where you want to be in. And two, the expense of the monthly rent. And meron na tayong resource. It's already there. Or the third one that I was thinking of was the police stations, because they also have places like that. And so, just a thought, given what you guys were saying, maybe it's also a question of looking at the resources we have and trying to find out how to make it more efficient in terms of usage, because they're there. Maybe the Catholic Bishops' Conference can
After 500 years, there's had to be some change.
Well, they're not being taxed, right? So they might as well provide access. They have those high spires. Just add a little
Antenna.
But it's already there. The government has the budget. The money is there. That much I know. So,
I think summation, maybe.
Well, I think,
Before we end,
please, go ahead.
Sorry.
I don't know how relevant this is with the group now, but I think I need to mention it. I for some reason, I got involved with the song because we were shocked that we are importing 93% of our soap. So I got involved with the law,
Iodized.
and then I learned that our iodine, which affects the brain of the children development. And many times we say the schools is bad quality of education, but it's turning out in some areas it's really the iodization, lack of iodine of the children, lactating mothers and the pregnant mothers. And I was shocked at the numbers, how behind we are and we're spreading it towards in the salt. I don't know, we're blaming school sometimes, but actually it's really the development of the child, because I don't know what part it has in this forum, but I think we have to be aware that many of our children, especially in certain areas of the Philippines that they will canvas, mahina yung brain development, and they will never really develop well. We don't solve our iodization deficiency.
So if I may add something.
Go ahead. Okay, I just wanted to have 3 points before we end on my side. So first, your question is, how do we move faster in being adaptable? So first, we shouldn't be scared to invest. Everyone's like, oh, that's too expensive, But we need to invest in people and tech, not just invest in tech, because we think, oh, it's so expensive, but invest in both people and tech, because then that will help us bring us further. Second, corporations should not be greedy, not just look at the bottom line, just not look at profits. If you're going to have AI to replace your people, who's going to pay the taxes in the end? Or do AI robots pay taxes to the government?
They may have to.
So what's going to happen to public consumption? So the short term, maybe it'll bring profits, but in the long term, there's no sustainability because there's no public consumption. And that's one of the biggest contributors to our GDP is public consumption.
70%, yeah.
70%. So what's going to happen to public consumption if we decide, okay, we're going to wait for the technology to get really good and replace people? So humans still have to be at the center. And third, accountability. Accountability in government, that they are spending our taxes properly in the proper infrastructure. We have enough money to invest in the better broadband infrastructure, but we have to make sure that there's accountability for that and that we get the technology that we deserve.
Brother Robert?
The thing that I would want to add is there was a conference where I was asked to guest on, and if I would add something to the curriculum, what would that be? I don't know how this will be represented, but Sir Klink opened it up. I think it's the partnership between the school and the family. I will say it in Tagalog because it really catches it. Pag may problema yung estudyante, sabihin, ganyan ka pa pinalaki ng magulang mo. Pag sa loob naman ng bahay, yan ba tinuturo sa inyo sa school? Di ba? If there is a partnership between, like, I don't know how to represent that. Andiyan naman si Grace. So, I think the family has a very important role in the educative environment for the children. Given all this, the Wi-Fi, the social media, the lurking manipulation that is happening now in social media, the more viewers, the more we become users. I think the family should mediate. I think conversation inside the home would happen, would be experienced, even as the community of inquiry in schools would be encouraged. I think that's the solution to the high-tech world would be the conservative conversation, community approach as we grow together, being human beings.
All right. Well, Mr. Yap, thank you for making us part of this discussion. I think if there's a key takeaway here, given the fact that we've gone into many different directions, is that there's no silver bullet to the problem of education. I mean, there is, as you said, I think merit to discussing tools, like media and technology, but there are, I think, issues related to that, such as how we use it ethically, morally, and to what end. I think is some of the points that were made here. I think that what's important is that we keep on discussing this at a national level. I don't think it's discussed as frequently as it should be discussed. Other things tend to distract us. Chacha in the news, again, wealth fund, another thing. But there are, I think, more fundamental things that deserve attention, such as education. And thank you for the opportunity to have that discussion with you. And we'll look forward to your other projects. And if there's opportunity for us to cover them as well, and we'd be glad to do so. And for the individuals who participate here, thank you very much for your thoughts. And I know this will not be the last time we'll be talking about education. If you'd permit us, maybe we'd like to reach out to you on some other occasion to get your points on developments of the day regarding our discussions today. So, thank you.
Okay, so thank you also. I'd like to thank SMNI, DCRJ, RMN, and especially Mr. Klink Ang and Dr. Dante Ang. And
Did the sister come from really to get here?
From Tugigaraw.
yes,
Tugigaraw?
yes, yes.
She must have double take you.
We are Siamese twins in education. And thank you to Klink Ang and the Manila Times. Like our other Ideas Roundtable, we request everyone to be interviewed after this so they can be individually featured as to your thoughts and ideas. Mel Mariano is over there to interview everyone. So as we break and have our lunch, please do not go. Yan ang bayad to be interviewed. Because we really appreciate your coming here. My good friend, Sister Merceditas, and everybody here who are equal good friends. And we look forward to ending Valentine's month on an equal high note. Thank you again for joining the 6 Ideas Roundtable of BCYF. Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.